Hare Krishna. So we are continuing today with the discussion of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and Gopinathacharya, or rather more than a discussion, a bit more of a chastisement maybe. So we have heard that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he had rejected Gopinathacharya's conclusion regarding the nature of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And having rejected this conclusion, Gopinathacharya now he is preparing to more strongly refute this. And so he speaks, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. His main point is that the Supreme Lord, he is called Triyug. He's not called Chaturyug. He is not called anything else. Instead, he is called Triyug, which means he is appearing in the three yugas, not in the four. And that fourth yuga, because we know through Shastric evidence that the Supreme Lord, he is appearing in Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, and Dwapar Yuga. So his argument is, if he has appeared in all these three, then how can he be appearing in the fourth, in Kali Yuga, if it is said that he is Triyug, only appearing, in the three yugas? And so, speaking like this, Gopinathacharya, he began, again, his heavy speaking. And he was saying, you are considering yourself a knower of all the Vedic scriptures, and so you are quoting them. However, you are neglecting the central and most focal points of the Shastras. You have neglected especially Srimad Bhagavatam, and you are neglecting Mahabharata. And so, it is stated that the Lord appears directly, but you say that in this age there is no manifestation or incarnation of Lord Vishnu. And so there is a clarification made. Gopinathacharya, he explains, yes, the Supreme Lord is Triyug. He is only appearing in three yugas. But this is referring only to the Lila Avatars. It is referring to the Lila Avatar category. We know Ghanshyam Prabhu, a bit ago, was going through all the different types of avatars, so we won't go too much into that. But the Lila Avatars, maybe they are not coming. However, the point is made that instead the Yuga Avatars appear. And in regards to the Yuga Avatars, it is very clear that even though the Lord is referred to as Triyug, there is still a Yuga Avatar appearing. And so, Gopinathacharya, he quotes a few Shastras. He quotes three main shloks, the first two from Bhagavatam and the last from the Vishnu Sahasranam. And so the first one that he quotes is the famous one. The famous one from Srimad Bhagavatam, Garga Muni, he is doing the astrology for Krishna, and he is seeing all of these opulent features. And so speaking, he says, Garga Muni speaking to Nanda Maharaj, he says, in the past your son had bodies of three different colors according to the age. These colors were white, red, and yellow. In this age, Dwapar Yuga, he has accepted a blackish body. So here we are reading in Shastras, in Srimad Bhagavatam, it is very clear. Even though Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he is feeling very confident, quoting Shastras in order to disprove the appearance of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Even though he is quoting like this, Gopinathacharya, he is showing that actually this is a selective reading, which is the result of one being bewildered by Maya. And instead, he is quoting this. And this is explaining again the Yuga Avatars. Each Yuga Avatar, they're coming in different colors, white, red, yellow, and black. Of course, we know black is referring to Krishna, we know. But there is also that in white, it is the Hamsa Avatar, who has come to establish the meditation, the Yuga Dharma of that age. And the red is the Yagya Avatar. Again, Ghanshyam Prabhu was going over these. And then, of course, yellow is Mahaprabhu. So here we see that actually this notion is correct, that there are various avatars. And in fact, that different sections of Shastra should not be taken out of the further context of the other Shastras. It is not that each individual Shastra or each individual shloka exists in a vacuum, existing without relation to anything else. In fact, they are all relating to each other. In regards to, we were discussing, there's exegesis and eisegesis. There is taking meaning out, exegesis, taking meaning out of Shastra, and there's eisegesis, reading meaning into it. If one wants to avoid eisegesis and reading meaning into Shastra, one requires a foundation and a contextual information. Because just in the same way that words have no meaning without context. If I say the word bark, and I can give all sorts of definitions, but the word bark can mean anything, really. It is only when I say that the dog barks, or that the tree has bark, that word is given meaning. And those meanings are different. Maybe the varieties of meaning can be only a small amount, but still, every word is given meaning by its context. That word bark, on its own, it means nothing. But when I say the sentence, the tree has bark, or the dog barks, then suddenly, or the dog does bark, then suddenly that word has been given meaning. In the same way, Shastra, even its statements, are all given their further bedrock of meaning by the surrounding context of the other shlokas that are being spoken, and then outside of the other shlokas, the other chapters of the Shastra, and then outside of the other chapters, the other various Shastras themselves. So just by quoting this one concept of three yug, as was done, it cannot be that a conclusive thing can be given, a conclusive conclusion can be given. In fact, the whole body of Shastra must be taken into account. And so Gopinathacharya, he is quoting very nicely, he's quoting several Shastric Pramanas to show that actually the greater context of Shastra gives further meaning, further flavor to this name three yug. It is not so straightforward. It needs to be contextualized within the grand body of Vedic revelation. And by doing this, he is giving this point. And then he is quoting again that in the age of Kali, as well as in Dwapar Yuga, the people offer praise to the Supreme Personality of Godhead by various mantras and observe the regulative principles of the supplementary Vedic literatures. Now please hear of this from me. And then he quotes, in this age of Kali, those who are intelligent perform the congregational chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who appears in this age always describing the glories of Krishna. That incarnation is yellowish in hue and is always associated with his plenary expansions, such as Sri Nityananda Prabhu, and personal expansions, such as Gadadhar, as well as his devotees and associates, such as Swarup Damodar. So this is the next text that is quoted. And so this text here is saying a similar thing. This one is speaking more about the category of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The first one is making the point that there are different conceptions of this name three yug. He does appear in the fourth yuga as a natural progression. It is a natural pattern that is established. So in the first one, Gopinathacharya, he is establishing that here there is a concept of the Yuga Avatar. Now in the second one, he is showing that this Yuga Avatar, he is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because here is a description beyond just the yellowish hue of the nature of this avatar. So again, he's progressively defining each point. Firstly, he's showing your understanding of three yuga is faulty. And now he's showing, but my understanding of three yuga is correct. Many people will say this idea of three yuga is faulty and prop up all sorts of people to be the avatar of this Kali Yuga. But so, in order to make that point, Gopinathacharya now he is quoting the second text. And the second one now is saying, not only does the Lord appear in Kali Yuga, but he appears as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then finally, he makes another point in order to reinforce his second point, where he quotes from the Vishnu Sahasranam, the Lord, in the incarnation of Gaura Sundar, has a golden complexion. Indeed, his entire body, which is very nicely constituted, is like molten gold. Sandalwood pulp is smeared all over his body. He will take the fourth order of spiritual life, sannyas, and will be very much controlled. He will be distinguished from Mayavadi sannyasis in that he will be fixed in devotional service and will spread the Sankirtan movement. Again, he is providing a great amount of clarity that it is in fact Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu who is that avatar, that Yuga avatar for this Kali Yuga. And he is quoting from the Vishnu Sahasranam Stotra. I was discussing before about how, because of course this is from Mahabharata, and I was describing how sometimes Mahabharata it is coming under some influences due to interpolations. It is not so consistent in all the different manuscripts. However, the Vishnu Sahasranam Stotra is one text that we can very strongly refer to. in the sense that Baladev Vidyabhushan, he has given a very sweet commentary on it. And having commentated upon it, because he is of course a perfected devotee, this is a stamp of approval, that this section at least has been preserved perfectly. In the same way, Bhagavad-Gita has been preserved very sweetly. There's not so much variation in this. Therefore, even though the greater body of Mahabharata may have some parts which we are uncertain about, Bhagavad-Gita and Vishnu Sahasranam Stotra, these two sections especially, as well as some other sections, can be said to be very well preserved, and therefore they're not fallen under that same dubious nature as maybe some other sections of Mahabharata are. So, for the reasons, obviously, whenever a text is commented upon, to produce a commentary is very difficult. It's not so easy. It's easy to read a text, it's maybe easy to even memorize a text. But in order to commentate on a text, in order to be able to explain a text, this is very difficult. But when a text has had the effort of being commentated on, this shows that a lot of attention is being given to it. And furthermore, a commentary allows us to see what the original meanings were, what the original words were, because each word is being described so minutely. Therefore, again, texts like Vishnu Sahasranam Stotra and Bhagavad-Gita, because they've been commentated so much, and also Srimad Bhagavatam. We know Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad-Gita actually did not have so many commentaries on it. Historically, that's only a modern development. Historically, it was actually Bhagavatam that had the majority of commentaries. There were an immense amount of commentaries that were on Srimad Bhagavatam. And because of this, this shows not only that its popularity was large enough that it was very well preserved, but furthermore, because it was having specific commentaries produced of such a wide variety, the readings and the shlokas are very, very well preserved. So, just a specific point, that it's not that every part of Mahabharata can be a bit uncertain to quote. And especially the parts that have been commentated and quoted by previous acharyas, we know are 100% perfect. And so then, Gopinath Acharya, he then makes a further point, however. He quotes Shastras very nicely, and he's explaining the error in the ways of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. However, he makes the point over the next few verses that actually there is no point quoting these Shastras to you. There is no point preaching to you. You are like barren land. It's like sowing seeds in barren land. The same thing is said sometimes on book distribution. If a person is very aggressive, it's like they're a very unripened fruit. There's no point picking them. You should wait until they ripen a bit. At one point, it's just wasted time. You're wasting your own time by trying to preach to somebody who will not understand. And in the other sense, you're also wasting their time, because you're only giving them opportunity to potentially blaspheme the Lord and potentially do all these things, because they're so averse to it. There is no real potential. That is also why it is one of the Namaparads to preach the glories of the holy name to faithless people. It's not that preaching is bad, but at one point it is not fruitful. It is not a good use of our time, it is not a good use of their time, and furthermore, it is taking such a great thing, such as the conclusions of the Vedas, the conclusions of the glories of the holy name, and distributing them out in front of people who have no value for them. Even though we are preaching all these great things and wanting to distribute this treasure, it is still nevertheless a treasure. And there's a very famous saying that one should not throw pearls before swine. If one throws pearls before pigs, they will not be able to appreciate the pearls, and they will not be able to treat them properly. And therefore it is not very respectful to the pearls to throw them out. And therefore, some audiences, it is better not to preach these things to. It is a waste of time. It is allowing them opportunity to offend. And furthermore, it is not holding to that elevated position, these elevated and glorified truths. However, that's the mercy then, because people will wonder, how then can we preach? Because it seems like most people are barren land. And that is the great purpose of the congregational chanting. Because someone can chant, even if one is not explaining the glories of the holy name, somebody can be engaged somehow by receiving prasadam, maybe, or by chanting and joining in the kirtan, or even hearing the kirtan. By this purification, they may be purified, they may receive some of that mercy. And by receiving some of that mercy, then maybe they will become a bit more fertile land. So it is not that one should abandon them, but rather one should be realistic, and rather one should be aware of the proper means of approaching the different various levels of people. And therefore, Gopinath Acharya, He says that when the Lord will be pleased with you, you will also understand these conclusions and will quote from the Shastras. The false arguments and philosophical word jugglery of your disciples are not faults of theirs. They have simply received the benediction of Mayavad philosophy. So the prasad, the mercy, this is the word used. The great mercy of the Mayavad philosophy is pure confusion. And in fact, it's rather interesting because this shows that actually this confusion, which comes from the Mayavad philosophy, this is the mercy. And so the Mayavadis, they have their names because, again, their Vad, their philosophy, they are saying, oh, this is all Maya. Everything is Maya, Krishna is Maya, everything is Maya. And that is the meaning by which people will say. But practically the meaning of the Mayavad philosophy is just that it is that which will bring one fully under the influence of Maya. The confusion and the illusion into the nature of true things and even into the nature of the Shastras. And we will hear soon when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu describes the nature of those Shastras. It is clouded away by the Maya of the Mayavad philosophy. It is seeing everywhere Maya, including in the scriptures. So they are completely bewildered by it. The only mercy that this Mayavad philosophy has is to bewilder one. And therefore this is also a strong point about the association and the listening to Mayavad speakers. Sometimes people will think, what's the harm? They'll say nice things. They tell me to be a vegetarian. They say, they'll quote Bhagavad-Gita. They'll apparently worship Krishna. So what's the point? I won't take on their Mayavad points, but I will maybe, I won't be so strict. I will invite people from all these bogus missions, like the Chinmay mission, Ramakrishna mission, all of these Mayavad missions. Why not? I'll associate. What's the harm? But we can see here that the greatest mercy that the Mayavadis can give, that the Mayavad philosophy can give, is total confusion and lack of access to the proper conclusions of the Shastras. That's why Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he lists the two types, the two severe types of Jana Sangaha, of Asat Sangha. The two severe types are those men who associate too much with women, and furthermore, those men who associate with men who associate too much with women. And of course, the inverse is true, those women who associate too much with men. Obviously, married couples don't count, that's fine, but he's meaning people they're not married to, and the impersonalists. These are the two worst types of association a spiritualist can have. There is no worse association than the two. And both of them will destroy one's spiritual life, as we know from Nectar of Instruction. Jana Sangaha is very toxic, and the epitome of Jana Sangaha is impersonalist or Mayavad association. Because what can we gain from it? From devotees association, the prasad is Krishna Bhakti. It is the highest forms of liberation. It is something beyond liberation. It is something so great that liberation seems distasteful for how tasteful it itself is. But what is the great prasad from Mayavad association? It is confusion and ignorance. So then he explains again, not only is his Siddhanta backed by Srimad Bhagavatam, by Shastra, but even his chastisement, even his disciplinary words are backed by the Amalam Puranam, by the Shruti Praman. And he says, I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is full of unlimited qualities and whose different potencies bring about agreement and disagreement between disputants. Thus the illusory energy again and again covers the self-realization of both disputants. In almost all cases, whatever learned Brahmins speak becomes accepted. Nothing is impossible for one who takes shelter of my illusory energy and speaks under her influence. This is the glories of Maya Devi, but it is not the glories of those who are illusioned by her. The point of this text, as explained by Srila Prabhupada, is that the glories of Maya is that people will believe all sorts of nonsense after taking shelter of her. This is the great glory of Maya Devi. Her glory isn't all sorts of other things. It's the absurd nonsense that people will propose and people will accept under the influence of Maya. Some of the complete, and Prabhupada quotes, he quotes the founders of various different Vedic schools, such as Kapila, Gautama, Jaimini, and other Brahmins. And he says that these are useless philosophical theories. And he says the modern day scientists are doing just the same. Many false theories about creation, which are backed up by seemingly logical arguments. However, their ideas are still nevertheless nonsense. And it is the glory of Maya Devi that anyone is so strongly convicted about such bogus ideas. We hear if one actually listens, not that one should, to an atheist try to justify why they think morality should exist, they'll just hear complete nonsense. But that same atheist will say, oh, God is very immoral because he has caused me to suffer. But if you ask an atheist, by what standard is he immoral, he won't be able to answer, because morality cannot exist if there is no transcendental giver of morality. This is a very simple thing, but no atheist can properly explain it. Yet, under the influence of Maya Devi, people will still be convicted of ideas with just simple questions can be completely unraveled. And so this is the glory of Maya Devi, that there can be Mayavadis, impersonalists, people who are atheistic, people who are saying that science and atheism are the highest ideologies. All these sort of things we should see not as the glories of human intellect, that they have come up with so many great ideas, because these ideas are not great. Instead, we should see the glories of that energy of Krishna, the external energy, which is able to allow people to believe such nonsense. And so, speaking like this, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he has heard all of this, and then he's he's done. And he said, okay, now I will get to my plan. I will get to my very good job of allowing Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to be properly educated into the way of Mayavad. And he tells Gopinathacharya, he says, please go to Mahaprabhu and invite him here. Ask him on my account. Bring Jagannath Prasadam with him, and then come with him, and then after then you can teach me. So he's still saying something respectful. It is not that they had a terrible relationship. We'll hear that Krishnadas Kaviraj Thakur, he says, Gopinathacharya, he was the brother-in-law of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and therefore their relationship was actually very sweet and intimate. And therefore Gopinathacharya taught him sometimes by blaspheming him, sometimes by praising him, and sometimes laughing at him. And so this went on for a while. And so we see another element here. It is not that devotees have the license to chastise whoever they want if they hear something. It is not that somebody can go up to anyone that they want and that will be an appropriate response. Gopinathacharya, he's showing very sweetly how the Vaishnava gives mercy through chastisement, through correction, through heavy correction. But at the end, Krishnadas Kaviraj Thakur, he is clarifying that the correct relationship must be there, not only for that chastisement to be efficacious in the receiver of it, but also for it to be appropriate in the giving of it. It is not that one can go and chastise anyone and everyone. I was saying before that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur would not chastise heavily, even though we know he was so strict and so heavy in his own sadhana and also in the sadhana of his disciples. But his heavy chastisement was not given to all of his disciples. Only a few were given that special mercy, because again, that appropriate relationship had to be there. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur properly read who should receive this mercy and who shouldn't. Not only because not all are able of receiving it, but not all are properly in the relationship in which they will beneficially take it. So we are seeing that. Anyways, this continues going. And so Mahaprabhu, he welcomes Gopinathacharya, who went to Mahaprabhu to repeat Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's request. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he was saying, okay, I will educate Mahaprabhu, I will educate the Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Vedanta. I will teach him what it is. And so Gopinathacharya and Mukunda Datta, when they were explaining this, they were sort of shaking their heads. They were thinking, this is what an absurd sentiment, and rightfully so. But Mahaprabhu, he responded with his great humility. He said, we should not speak like this. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he has given me great affection and mercy. Out of his affection, he wanted to protect me and see that I follow the regulative principles of a sannyasi. How can we fault him for this? And so with this humility, Mahaprabhu, he went to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and he traveled to him, and the next day, and and he went and he approached him. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he offered Mahaprabhu a seat, and he sat down before him, giving proper respects, the respects that are due to a sannyasi. And doing this, he begins to give the explanation of Vedanta. And he speaks for a while. He says that the Vedanta philosophy, the hearing and studying of it, is a sannyasi's main business. Without hesitation, you should hear it from a superior person. And so Mahaprabhu says, you are very merciful to me, and it is my duty to observe your order. And so, like days and days, they were hearing. And for 7 days constantly, Mahaprabhu, he did not speak a single word. Constantly, he was hearing the conclusions of Vedanta. Obviously, these were not the proper conclusions. When Vedanta is being referred to here, it is Vedanta through the lens of Shankaracharya, the impersonalist philosophy. Not that Shankaracharya himself is to be condemned, as we will read later on in this chapter. Shankaracharya, of course, is a great devotee of the Lord. In fact, in Jaiva Dharma, there is the pastime of a sannyasi, a Mayavadi sannyasi, who is, I believe, Sannyasi Maharaj was his name, and he had taken to the devotional path. He was a Mayavadi on the Paramahamsa platform, according to the Mayavad system. And yet, one day he saw a Vaishnav crying and rolling in the ground. And at that point, he grew incredibly distasteful of all of his apparent realization, of all of his knowledge of Mayavad, when he was seeing how much this devotee rolling in the dust in Navadvip, chanting the names of the Supreme Lord. By seeing this, he began to realize the true sweetness of spiritual life. And so he took shelter from a bona fide Vaishnava, and he began to be instructed. And so as he was beginning to be instructed, at one point he was having the idea that maybe Shankaracharya, he is bogus. He is a bogus person. And so he asks the Vaishnav who he had taken shelter under. He says, he asks a question about Shankaracharya's philosophy. And expecting maybe some harsh words from this Vaishnav, instead, this sannyasi, he saw that Vaishnav who he had taken as a spiritual master, instead put his hands together and said, I offer unlimited dandavats to the lotus feet of Shankaracharya. His philosophy is maybe less than ideal, and his philosophers and his followers maybe even less so, less than ideal. However, Shankaracharya is a great devotee of the Lord who preached an incorrect philosophy, and we are about to hear why it is so incorrect. But he preached it on the order of the Supreme Lord. And therefore, even though we disagree with Shankara's philosophy, we disagree because we know that he did not actually believe it. It was a preaching tactic that he had to preach in order to re-establish the authority of the Vedas. So, even though he is teaching the conceptions of Shankaracharya, and even though we are about to hear that they are somewhat bogus, it is not that Shankaracharya himself is bogus. In fact, he is a very elevated devotee of the Lord. So, of course, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he was speaking constantly like this. And then, at the very end of the 7 days, on the 8th day, he was a bit confused. Normally, even when we are hearing something simple, people will always have questions. But Vedanta Sutra is very complex. It's said to, the Sutra genre itself is very complex. The whole idea of sutras, when we speak of the Sutra genre, it is a text of Sanskrit which is meant to condense most fully one's philosophy. And so it's said that a Sanskrit composer gets more joy out of cutting one syllable from a sentence in a sutra than he does out of the birth of his first son. Because he so much is enjoying making these as short and compact as possible. Because the whole point of the Vedanta Sutra is that it is repeated by a guru who will then elaborate on it. So it's meant to be short so that it's easy to memorize. It's easy to memorize, and therefore, having heard it properly explained, the disciple having memorized it, he'll be able to remember, oh, this is the conclusion, because this is what's been explained to me. So naturally, it is very, very difficult to understand. So normally there are many questions. Such, if you see a translation, I haven't read it, but I've seen certain parts of it by His Holiness Bhanu Swami. He has translated some, and you'll see 2-3 words in Sanskrit are being translated in like 4 or 5 sentences sometimes. It's very, very compact. And so normally there are many questions asked when explaining Vedanta Sutra. However, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has remained silent. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya begins to become very, very confused. Why is he not speaking? And so he asks him, you have been simply listening, fixed in your silence. Since you do not say whether you think it is right or wrong, I cannot know whether you are actually understanding Vedanta philosophy or not. And Mahaprabhu, he replied, I am a fool, and consequently I do not study the Vedanta Sutra. I'm just trying to hear it from you because you have ordered me. Only for the sake of executing the duties of the renounced order of sannyas do I listen. Unfortunately, I cannot in the least understand the meaning you are presenting. And so Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, okay, that makes sense. You're not understanding. However, if somebody doesn't understand, normally they ask questions to clarify. Why have you not asked questions for me to explain further? And yet, and then Mahaprabhu says, oh, no. I'm not struggling to understand the Vedanta Sutra. I don't need to ask questions about that. I'm very much struggling to understand the explanations you have given of it. The meanings are very, very clear. They are, in fact, very, very direct. However, the purports you are presenting simply cover the meanings like a cloud. This is what I was saying before. The Mayavadi, their philosophy is like clouds, causing illusion, even over the direct teachings of the Shastras. He says, the purports you have presented, they are clouds covering up the effulgence of this Vedanta Sutra. And he said, you do not explain the direct meanings of the Brahma Sutras. Indeed, it appears that your business is to cover their real meaning. Srila Prabhupada was once speaking on Gandhi, this Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. He was speaking about him, and he was speaking about his Bhagavad-Gita, because I remember we had to look at it at university. And if you read his first chapter, Dharma Kshetre Kurukshetre, he's speaking about the location. And we know, what does this mean? This means in the place of pilgrimage, Kurukshetra. Very simple, very straightforward. But Gandhi decides to make a very, very long, elaborate description that actually this is referring to like the human condition. This is referring to the human body. This is referring to actually to politics. In certain different sections, in fact, Gandhi will say, actually this is about the independence struggle and all sorts of things. He will draw in all of these meanings out of something which is very, very clearly about Arjuna and Krishna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. It has nothing to do, historically speaking, about these. Philosophically, it has everything to do with everything. Bhagavad-Gita is eternally relevant, but it is eternally relevant properly understood. It is not that all of these other various meanings can be pulled out. And Srila Prabhupada, he said very nicely, he said, people will say that this Bhagavad-Gita, the Kurukshetra, that it is talking about is the human body, or it is the political India. But I have not yet found the Sanskrit dictionary which gives the definition of Kurukshetra as the human body. Every single Sanskrit dictionary will say it means Kurukshetra. So many people, again, that is what I was discussing, we see the great trick of the Mayavadis is eisegesis. They will see something which is so clear, so direct. How can one take any other meaning out of Dharma Kshetre Kurukshetre? How can one take any other meaning out of it? But instead they will read all these other meanings into it, because if they take the direct meaning, it'll refute all of their nonsense philosophy. And so this is why Mahaprabhu has said, you do not explain the direct meaning of the Brahma Sutras. And he uses a very interesting word, mukhya artha. Because actually, I'll write these up, in Sanskrit there are three levels of meaning for texts. There is the primary meaning, there is the secondary meaning, and then there is the final suggested meaning. And so, all these meanings are valid, and we'll see our acharyas, they use all of them in order to explain various texts. For example, sometimes in Bhagavatam, it will say that a city is in a river. And we know that the city is having chariots and everything, so it cannot possibly be inside a river. But it is still not incorrect to say in the river means on the bank of the river. So this is an example maybe of a secondary or third level meaning. It is maybe not the primary meaning, but it is not denying the primary meaning. So the three levels of meaning, the first one is the mukhya level, the mukhya artha. And this is the level that Mahaprabhu is saying is being denied by the Mayavadis. The second level is often given as lakshana. Lakshana. But in this specific shlok, Mahaprabhu is referring to it as the guna meaning. And then lastly, the final meaning, the third level, is vyanjana, which is the suggested level. So the first means primary or direct. The second is secondary or indicated. And then the last one is suggested. These are the three levels that Sanskrit words or even Shastra is normally understood in. And it is not that when Mahaprabhu is glorifying the essence of the mukhya, the primary meaning, it is not that all these other ones are useless. But if one is running to the second or third one in order to deny the direct meaning of the mukhya direct meaning, then it becomes a bit nonsense. It's almost like a child. When they hear something they don't want from their father, they'll run to their mother and ask the same thing and hope to get a second verdict. Rather than accepting the authority of the one parent, they'll run to another one. In the same way, the Mayavadis, they will deny the mukhya by saying, oh, but the lakshana meaning could be this. The indirect meaning could be this. Maybe when Krishna is saying that you will enter into me, or you will come to serve me, or you will come to my abode, maybe the lakshana meaning or a vyananjana meaning could be, oh, that means we are merging into Brahman. But that runs it completely contrary to the primary meaning. They've jumped around, taking a secondary or third level implication of the shloka and saying this is the primary meaning. And therefore, therefore, this is nonsense, and Mahaprabhu, he is completely refuting this. And so, he continues, and he says the Vedanta Sutra is the summary of all the Upanishads. Therefore, whatever direct meaning is there in the Upanishads is also recorded in the Vedanta Sutra, or the Vyasa Sutra. For each sutra, the direct meaning must be accepted without interpretation. So there, the Mukhya Artha must be accepted without the Gauna Artha. The Gauna Artha means the Artha coming from the Guna, second level. Or by the, and understood like this, one should, you should proceed you should abandon you should abandon your imaginative interpretation and proceed by understanding the direct meaning. So therefore, Mahaprabhu is saying that when we are reading Shastra, we should take the mukhya meaning. Sometimes people, they will struggle with some text or somewhere, and they'll just like to say, I do not find this very believable, therefore it is all a metaphor. But Mahaprabhu here, he is condemning this. What Bhagavatam seems to say is most likely what it is saying. Maybe contextually we have missed the mukhya meaning, but actually sometimes we can avoid this. Maybe sometimes something will seem unbelievable, or maybe even it will seem too direct. And so we will try to rationalize in all sorts of ways that actually it doesn't mean this. Actually it doesn't mean this. It doesn't mean what it is apparently saying because it is too difficult for us to accept. But Mahaprabhu, he is saying himself that we accept the authority of the Veda. And not only do we accept the authority of the Veda, we accept the primary and direct mukhya understanding of the Veda. And therefore, accepting that, we must abandon our imaginative interpretations, which can tell us all sorts of things. And all the sorts of things it can tell the majority of people who are under the influence of Maya, again, the clouds of Maya, they are blocking out the sun of the Vedanta Sutra. In the same way, all these imaginative conceptions are coming from the material mind, and the material mind is nothing but a transformation of the external energy, which is Maya itself. And therefore, how can all these imaginative conclusions be true or conclusive? Instead, one should accept the primary meaning, and these other two can be supplementary or clarifying or bringing out some deeper meaning, but they should never contradict the primary or direct meaning of Shastra. And there, Mahaprabhu, he continues, and he says, although there is other evidence, the evidence given in the Vedic version must be taken as foremost. Vedic versions understood directly are first-class evidence. Conch shells and cow dung are nothing but the bones and stool of some living entities, but according to the Vedic version, they are both considered very pure. There's an interesting point Mahaprabhu is making here. So he's actually gone backwards in the order. He's saying, if we were to reconstruct this, one could say that among all sources of knowledge, the Vedas are highest. And of all understandings of the Veda, the primary understanding is the highest. But Mahaprabhu has gone in the reverse. He said the most important understanding of the Veda is the primary meaning. And then the Veda themselves are the highest source of information. And other sources of information are also valid, just in the same way as these two are valid, but not valid when they contradict the Vedic version. Sometimes people will hear our refutations of Anuman and Pratyaksha, of sensory perception and logical conclusions, and they'll think that we are denying logic, that logic is a nonsense source of knowledge, or that our sense perception is a nonsense source of knowledge. But it is only imperfect. It's not that people can't learn things, because then they'll say, oh, we can build cars, we can build mobile phones. So clearly it's not all nonsense. But that's not the point. The point isn't that these senses are all nonsense. The point is that they are not perfect and cannot give perfect knowledge in the same way, again, that the Vedic conclusions can make. And my spiritual master, His Holiness Radha Govinda Das Goswami Maharaj, makes a point when commenting on this point, that conch shells and cow dungs are nothing but the bones and the stool of some living entities. He elaborates on that point, and he says, if one tries to override or overrule the Vedic conclusions with their own logical ideas, they will hear this and they will say, oh, they're using conch shells and they're using cow dung. They're using these in the temple. And cows are very nice, and so cow dung is very auspicious. But we know humans, in one sense, they're even higher than cows. The Brahmins are on such a high level. So why should I smear my house with cow dung? Why should I use cow dung for cooking? Instead, I will go and I will take the stool of the Brahmins. I will collect it and I'll instead smear my house with that. Instead, I will do my cooking with that. And the conch shell, this is the bone of some creature. Why should I bother using that? Why should I use the bones of some aquatic creature when I can instead go find, again, the bones of a Brahmin? Because higher than these aquatic creatures are humans. And the highest of humans are the Brahmins. So I will go and I'll take the skull out of a funerary pyre somewhere. And I will take the skull of a Brahmin and instead I will use that. I'll use that for abhisheks. I'll use that for begging. I will use that for all sorts of things. I'll blow into it in the morning. I'll see what sound that makes. And I'll do all these things. But this is the result. That makes lots of logical sense. Doesn't it? It makes a lot of sense that if this animal is worth something, the human is in one sense worth more, and the Brahmin is most worthy. Therefore, why not use their bones instead? Why not use their dung instead? This is what happens if we allow logic to rule our reading of Shastra. Ultimately, the Vedas are saying these things. And they may seem impure. We know that dung and bones are considered impure. But the Vedas are saying that these two are pure. Even though it is not that the Vedas are illogical, but sometimes they speak from a platform which our logic cannot reach. Because not only is our logic imperfect, it is very, very limited. It cannot reach into the full understandings of transcendental life and transcendence. And therefore, Mahaprabhu, he's making this point, that the Vedas, they are not subjected to these other meanings in order to reconcile logical points. In fact, if one looks at some many Mayavadi commentaries on Bhagavad-Gita, so many times they'll say, it may seem to be saying this, but it is actually saying this because this, and this. And they'll present all sorts of arguments, but ultimately they're merely denying the direct teachings of the Shastras, and they're applying their own logic, and at that point they may as well smear the dung of Brahmins around their house. They may as well instead do abhishek with the skulls of Brahmins who have left their bodies, because they are functionally doing the same thing. They're applying their own logical systems in order to twist some meaning of Shastra. And so Mahaprabhu says, the Vedic statements are self-evident. Whatever is stated there must be accepted. If we interpret according to our imagination, the authority of the Vedas is immediately lost. The Brahma Sutra, compiled by Vyasadeva, is as radiant as the sun. One who tries to interpret its meaning simply covers that sunshine with cloud. And there, at the end, there Mahaprabhu, he is concluding this section of his explanation of the proper understanding of the Vedanta. He is explaining the proper role of the Vedic revelation, and he's explaining how it should be properly understood. Because why is the authority of the Vedas immediately lost? If one is using an imaginary idea of it, it is not that the Vedas' authority can be lost. The Vedas have their authority in of themselves. They do not need authority from anything else. The Vedas are their own authority, and the Vedas are the highest authority. The reason why Mahaprabhu is saying that the authority of the Vedas is immediately lost is that the moment one applies an imaginary understanding of the Vedas, now it is their imagination and not the Vedas that they are studying. The Vedas can never lose their authority, but they can be substituted for something else. And that substituted fake version of the Vedas, which one has in their mind, is very unauthoritative. It is the imaginative understanding of the Vedas is the Paundrak to the Vedic Krishna. So, like this, Mahaprabhu, he is explaining the proper conceptions. And then we will continue the discussion, not tomorrow, but on Thursday. We will continue how Mahaprabhu then goes on to explain not only the errors in the Mayavadi's approach to the Vedic scriptures, but also their errors in their conclusions into the nature of Brahman and the Supreme Personality, and how his features are very personal, and again, not their Mayavadi nonsense. So that's what we'll continue hearing in Mahaprabhu's correct elaboration on the Vedanta on Thursday. Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Thakur ki jai, Sri Caitanya Caritamrita ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vishaya Bhutale Shrimate Radha Govinda Gosanti Namane Namaste Prabhupada Devam Gauravari